Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is 4:02. I appreciate everybody joining us today. As we get ready for the holiday season. Our agenda today, getting an update from Mr. Eric Weiss from PVPC and the team from there. In person with us today, we have Mr. Charlie Knight. Thank you for coming, and Mr. Stephen Howard, and including myself. And then we have a number of folks online, so thank you guys for joining. All right, so before I pass it over to Eric, I just wanted to, got some updates. But because of some timing stuff, Eric has a 5 o'clock that he has to be on, so I'm gonna let him go first. And then I'll give some more updates after his presentation and what he's discussing. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. I was at 5 o'clock too.
All right, well, perfect. Well, without further ado, Eric, I'm gonna shoot it over to you, man. We can't hear you if you're. No,
How about now?
Yeah.
yes.
This is a
All
digital
right.
equity committee and you don't know how to turn on your mic?
I know, not with this headset. I'm ready to rip it off and throw it out, but that's beside the point. All right, let me see what I can find here.
The share button is on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah,
This is gonna be fun.
thanks, Stephen.
All right, we can see your screen.
You can see my screen, but what I'm looking for just isn't there. So give me a moment.
All right.
Was there a moment ago. Hang on.
Thought it was gonna be fun.
Yeah, I don't know whether.
Nobody even be let in.
No, everybody's, and I just want to see why this is so large, the font.
Why isn't, all right. Oh, is it over here? Can you see that? What do you see on your screen?
We see a Excel sheet.
Oh, good. All right, so we are in the right place. Never mind. All right, so what you have in front of you, and I'm glad that Steven's getting a good chuckle out of me because he deserves it, without a doubt. So this is just a basic timeline from now into the end of the grant timing, that basically lays out in terms of timing what we would like to see. So right here at the top, we're currently working with the citizens in the city. This is the review that has gone on for our work. I'll go over in more detail what that means. I would love to have a final report to submit to MBI by February. Which would mean it goes through all parties and the city says, okay, and we send it off to the MBI people. And I would love to have approval of that by MBI by at least March. I would hope we can do this faster, but I'm just trying to be realistic in my timeline. But that would mean coordinating all final edits and making sure that both the city and MBI are happy with what's in the report, et cetera. From that point forward, it's all about what gets decided for implementation by the city. So there'll be a set of recommendations with costs attached to them in the final report, of which I'll show a partial version of in a moment. We are available up until the end of June to be supporting the city and supporting the implementation piece. So it's not as if we're just going to say, okay, implementation, here you go, Springfield, do it. We have time and support from MBI to be able to do that between now and whatever you want to call it, July 1st, June 30th. So I think that's an important piece for everybody to know. And then hopefully the goal is to have at least for the implementation monies and everything else in place how it's going to be used by the end of June. So the request was for a very basic, or the request was for a timeline. I made it very basic because there's so many points in here where their decision making needs to happen both on the part of the city or by MBI in terms of submitting the final report, approving the final report, getting the go-ahead for the implementation, and then deciding which implementation pieces will go at what time. So that's part one. And if I have another spreadsheet which shows a little bit more detail and costs, but if anybody has any question on the timing of where we're at, I take those right now. All right.
Steven, Mr. Howard has a question.
Okay.
How come it's taken so long to get the final approval to MBI, considering how long this committee has been existing?
I'm just trying to put it, if we can expedite this, I'm happy to expedite it, Stephen. I was not trying to stretch it out or anything. I was just saying, okay, we've got January coming up. We work out all the details, we submit it, they give approval. I know they're trying to approve these things as quick as they can. If we can move this all up a month or two, I'm perfectly happy with that.
I'd also, I know it's a little backwards, we're talking about timeline. If any folks have any questions specific to this timeline, I think I'd like for Eric, for us to take a step back and go into some of the meetings that we had over the last several weeks.
Right.
So I will say on my end, I had an initial meeting with the mayor and some of his department heads to talk about this work. And we talked about the draft and getting that to them. I guess we had a conversation. He didn't know as much about the work, so I made sure I kind of filled him in. And then we talked about next potential steps. And then I mentioned, we were setting up a meeting for Eric and his team to connect with the department heads directly to kind of talk about this stuff. Because as part of this final report, that they will submit, there has to be conversations ongoing with the city. And for the city then has to make that final recommendation. But Eric, if you can kind of go in to the meeting that you had with the city department heads.
Sure. So was it November 26th?
Eric, hold on. I saw Beatrice's hand go up, so I'd like to give her opportunity before.
Yeah, and Eric, maybe after you explain the meetings with the city, I'm just curious if you're building in time to do engagement, so further engagement with residents to let them know that the draft is public. Do you intend to post it on PVPC's website, the city's website? Like how do you intend to inform the public?
Well, that was part of the reason that I left some time so that there would be room to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I believe it was on November 26th, we had a meeting with the department heads, in which we went over a summary version of the report, which was sent to all of you. And basically what we tried to do was acknowledge where we were in the process and what the potential priorities could be at that time. There was quite a bit of discussion in that room, with various pieces being looked at, and we got a sense from that group of where their priorities were. That they were very much concerned with something like the city becoming an owner of fiber, but more in favor of really trying to get the word out there and getting people, in the system and working well. Their concern was much more about addressing local needs than it was about the big picture, the big expensive thing that could be done. There wasn't necessarily a lot of support for the idea of a mesh network. But there was the idea for like hotspots and things. That'll be on the next chart. I can bring that up and that'll help with this discussion. So why don't I do that as well? Find it. So I got you all back. And let's try the next one. Isn't this fun with Eric?
Doing great.
So far, so good. Where is? There it is. All right, can you see that? The green spreadsheet?
Yes.
Awesome. So this says, this is on the caveat of the report is submitted by 2/15/25, which is February 15th. So this is basically a version of the top 8, top 10 ideas that were put forward, starting with the idea of creating a permanent digital equity working group. That is by appointment. There's no money attached to it. It's just a city decision. I know there are a number of people in the city who want this committee to keep going. So this was one of the pieces to put there. So there's some continuity, regardless of what happens with like the city council and things like that. There's continuity to keep this going. Item 2, which seemed to create some interest on the part of many, although there were some reservations, was the idea of creating some sort of digital equity coordinator position for the city, somebody who can keep this work going. The idea being that maybe it could be housed as a in one of the departments in the city. It could be part of somebody's job. It could be an entire job, depending on how funding works out. We have some money in place. We have some $20,000 from Comcast still that we're holding on to that we could certainly divert towards this. So this is a internal political discussion about where it could be and what department and who could possibly take it on. But it does have distinct value for the city in terms of keeping things going. Then item 3 was the idea that there needs to be some more hotspots located in various locations around the city. There's some costs there of $120 per unit per year. So the city can say, we want 10, we want 20, we want 30, maybe more, and the cost would be discovered from there in terms of the $120 per year per unit. Item 4 was continuing to advocate for funding. We have done extensive research, and I know the counselor has, and we've talked to MBI and we've talked to others. All the money that is flowing through these federal programs is coming through MBI. We have not missed any deadlines or other programs that way. We are continuing to scour other potential sources. I have somebody on staff who's looking to see if there are other grants we could look at. But that is the idea here, is that it would be, there's a need for other monies. That's not to say that there won't be a realignment or redeployment of some of the monies from MBI as we go through time. We've heard hints that there will be some realignment, some other monies put out there for the communities and for implementation, because there was enough of the BEAD money left over that they could reconfigure it. But there's no detail on that yet. So I don't have anything specific to let you know on that. Item 5, the idea of some strategically located for public Wi-Fi. There is a local effort, which is going to be announced soon, in which there'll be leftover ARPA monies put towards that. And we will certainly line up everything we can to help that in whatever ways we can. I don't have any specific detail because I know it hasn't been approved by the board that's going to do it, but I do know that it's something that is rolling and is coming towards us, and it's something we're going to tag on to when it comes, for the benefit of Springfield and other people that we're working with. The next one on this list, item 6, is to establish a program to work with Comcast and the landlord to increase connectivity citywide. We all know that everybody says there's fiber up to every building, but the question is, how is it used and how is everything used in each location? And so if there's a way to set up a program like other cities have done, to work with landlords, to work with the provider to improve this, there's a big reason to do that, as we all know. There was considerable discussion about things like loaning devices, giving devices away, helping people who are in arrears, because first of all, the ACP program is no longer, which was unfortunate, and I'll just say foolish for not continuing, but we'll leave it there. There is a need, and like if I'm behind on a bill, then I can't get a new device, those kinds of things. And that's just, that only makes it more complicated for those who are right on the edge of trying to figure out what to do and how to use their devices. There's also a need in number 8 here for there to be citywide programs that would be, utilizing the agencies in the city that could help train people, provide digital skills training, provide tech support. There are a number of those, and they're all listed in the report. That would be really good partners for the city and with the city to move that ahead. The last 2 items that are on here, because this was intended to try to be a top 10 list, was the area mesh networks, which again would require a study and then would require finding the money to put it in place. And then the other one of owning, installing, and operating a fiber network. While some communities have been able to be successful at that, that did not seem like it had a lot of traction with the department heads and the people that were in the room the other day. But it's still there. It's something the city could always look at. I know there is genuine concern about competition and fairness of competition, and can there be a better way to do it? Certainly owning your own fiber would be a way to look at that, but it's a sort of long-term expensive option. I can say that the city will be able to obtain up to $100,000 in implementation funds once the final report is in, and it can be decided how that money could be allocated. And then finally, I'm going to reemphasize the fact that we as an agency are available to get as many things done as can be done, but till the money officially runs out from MBI, which would be 6/30. But there's enough money there to support our time to get like a spec written, if it has to be written, to put a bid out for the city, to help coordinate a piece of this, to do some outreach on different pieces of this. So there's still time to get things done in a really positive way. There's still time to make this work really well. And regardless, the report as it stands will have great value in terms of helping determine direction for the city and what steps could come next in the future, depending. Obviously, there's a lot of ifs in terms of what could be, what could happen, but this is a really good step towards that. So would I like to expedite the approval of the report? Yes, but we do need to, as B pointed out, there needs to be some room left for the public to take a look. We've run a couple of workshops in which people have come and we've talked to them. We ran some before that. We've gotten a considerable amount of input, all of which is included in the report. We've certainly got some good delineation in there about things that could or should happen. But we're very much in the position now of trying to say to the city, let's get this approved, let's get this moved so we can move on with the next step, which is to get some things done on the implementation side. So with that, we are working on another version of the draft report. But we wanted to wait for today's meeting to kind of say, okay, we like the way things are going. You know, give us that other draft and we'll work on that next. We didn't want to confuse today's meeting with a sort of line by line approach to another version of a report. That wouldn't have been a good use of anybody's time. So we are here. We're open to suggestions and comments from anybody. Timing is good. It's 4:20. We can certainly answer as many questions as you might have. Both Michael and I are here along with Doug to do that, and I'll turn it back to the counselor at this point.
Thanks, Eric. Just quickly on these top 10 items, I know I've asked you in the past to send it to the group. I just want to re-clarify. Did folks receive those, including not just the top 10, but outside of that when?
There was another version of this which had more than that, yes,
Okay.
that they received. This is a slightly more refined version for today's discussion.
All right, I just want to make sure that folks, because I remember asking for you to send that out. So I
Yeah,
just want to make sure if anybody does not have that or missed the email, I just want to make sure that we get them that information, because part of this
Yeah.
process is, we met with the city.
Yep.
Eric and team talked about everything that's gone on, talked about what's going on in the landscape of it, and then got feedback from the city. But I also want to continue to get feedback from this
Right.
group
Yep.
to help inform, so I want to know what folks' thoughts are in terms of what Eric has brought up in
Yep.
terms of the top 8 to 10,
Yep.
or even anything else within that top, in terms of the recommendations. So with that, go ahead, Eric.
I was gonna say the version they received was a top 11 with a slight shifting in the order of things, but it was all there.
All right. And with that being said, I see Roberta's hand up. So Roberta.
Yeah, two questions. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I joined a few minutes late. So I just wanted, if there's something that you sent out subsequent to our last meeting, I have not received anything since our last meeting. So I don't know if you're talking about the draft that was sent out the last time or something else. And then just so that I'm clear, because as I said, I did join a few minutes late. This is a timetable for us, I mean the city of Springfield,
Yep.
all of us, to decide how we want to go after $100,000. Is that what we're looking at?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not a timetable that addresses how to go after something that will satisfy what the Biden administration said was their mission in terms of digital equity for the people of whatever community we're talking about. Because $100,000, we all know, doesn't get Springfield there.
I don't disagree. The money that flowed out of the Biden administration to Massachusetts, the majority of it went through MBI and they set up the programs. That was very much the state's intent. So I can't speak to the detail inside that decision making, but I can tell you that they're the ones who put together this program to help with the evaluation piece.
Okay, but we know that in the state of Springfield, there have also been multi-million-dollar allocations, including to one of the organizations that you have assisted in Western Massachusetts, got a multi-million-dollar allocation. So I don't mean you personally, I mean PVPC.
I
So
appreciate that.
this is excuse me?
No, go ahead.
So this is $100,000 that we're spending a year and a half to obtain. If I sound annoyed, it's because I am.
Okay.
So I'm not going to apologize for that.
I'm gonna turn it to Michael for a minute because he knows more about what was received through the Alliance and other sources.
Okay, let me just say, I'll use one example, the devices you're talking about. The Biden administration's stated purpose had to do, among other things, with making it possible for people to have employment, to have the skill set, the infrastructure, et cetera, for employment. A $300,000 device doesn't get you to, it barely gets you to schedule a doctor's appointment, much less to pursue remote work. So, I'm just being very candid with you. $100,000 is meaningless. $100,000 doesn't even cover the cost of a consultant firm. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Eric, if you can, just remind folks and just be clear on what is this $100,000 for? I mean, this $100,000 is the Municipal Digital Equity Implementation Grant, right?
Yep.
And that's the grant that focuses on areas around staff capacity for digital equity, Wi-Fi access and innovative connectivity, public space modernization, connectivity for economic hardship.
Yep.
Digital literacy, device distribution and refurbishment, and education, outreach, and adoption. Those are there
Right.
as laid out by the MBI website. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the $100,000 that we're going after would be attached to something within that. That's what this planning grant is for. Correct?
Yes,
Eric, can I jump in and correct you?
absolutely.
Yeah, so that list of 6 things was connected to the grant program, which is the Regional Partnership Program, of which there's 9 recipients across the Commonwealth. They're sort of big coalitions, either geographically based, like the Alliance for Digital Equity in Western Mass, or content-based, like VinFin, which supports people with mental and behavioral health challenges. So there's only 9 recipients that
But that's a different grant, Michael, right? That's the
yeah,
digital.
but those six things are part of the regional partnership. So with the municipal planning, the idea was municipalities can do whatever planning. And so, for example, if Springfield decided to go for mesh networks, that's not within the 6. So if a municipality said, we want to fund something around digital equity that's beyond those 6 things that you identified, a municipality could. So that's what I'm trying to differentiate.
Okay. Thanks.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Howard.
What I'm confused about is why are we settling for crumbs when there's so much money on, so much food on the table? I mean, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Technology Park got $45 million from MBI. There's a Deaf Institute that got over $60 million. There's an educational facility that got another 40-something million dollars. Why are we talking about $100,000 for the city of Springfield?
I'll just jump in. I don't know those organizations, but I have never heard of MBI giving out those size grants because that's more money
Well,
than they.
I can find it and I'll be happy to share it with you, but I've shared that information with the chair.
If I can jump in, I was gonna talk about this later on, but I did have a conversation with MBI. I spoke with Miss Ariana Fielding and I actually sent her all that stuff Mr. Howard, that you sent me, and I asked her directly, are there any opportunities? And so Coy Malone, who's the grants manager here for the city, was with me on that call, and I asked her specifically, there's concerns that we're missing on opportunities. Can you let me know if there's any opportunities that the city has missed out on from the MBI perspective? And what she told me is that there was nothing that she could see that the city qualified for that we missed out. Again, that was the question I asked her, specifically because you were sending me a lot of those information. So I just wanted to make sure that the city qualified for stuff. And so that was the response I got from her on that piece.
Okay, now, just to,
But I also share your concern about
Yep.
monies being out there and us settling for crumbs, because that's not what this work.
That was never the
going.
plan, but
That's not the plan here, you know, from this group to all the work that you guys put in there.
Yep.
But in terms of this report, in terms of right now, what we're trying to get it done for the $100,000, these are one of the steps we have to do. That does not mean that simultaneously, I've also asked Eric, and I've mentioned this with you in the room as well before, and you guys have mentioned this in the last meeting, what are the opportunities outside of MBI?
Yep.
Right, whether it's other private organizations, foundations, and this is something that you and I believe Roberta had brought up. So I asked them the same thing, you know, what are the opportunities are out there that we can be leveraging to combine these resources so that we're not just going after $100,000?
and could the MBI program have been structured to give more money to larger communities and lesser money to smaller communities? That probably could have happened, but that's not the way they structured it. So I can't justify that one way or the other. Like I said, I've been looking, and I have a member of my staff who's looking regularly to see if there are other grant opportunities out there. And we have not missed a deadline on any of those, so.
I see Roberta's hand up again.
Yeah, is there anything that prevents the city of Springfield from having a collaboration with one of these other organizations, non-municipal organizations, to work on going after funds? For example, and I'll just use this as an example. There was an organization in Western Springfield that was concerned with education specifically tied into health-related matters that got a fairly sizable grant. I believe it was connected to MBI. Was there something, or is there something that prevents us, let's say, our health department from working with a non-municipal health organization to pursue a grant opportunity from MBI to go after something that would benefit the healthcare sector? As an example, or are we forced to just think in terms of what MBI says is specifically for municipalities to go after?
No, the answer is, of course, that there could be partnerships that go after other grants.
And I will chime in on that, Roberta. That was actually one of the things when I speaking with the representative from MBI, as I mentioned to them all the different grant opportunities, and when she broke them out, she said that a lot of those were broken out to specific areas or fields or organization types. And one of the things I did ask her is that there are a lot of, let's say, dollars out there, but they're broken up into different areas. And so what I wanted to learn from her is how can we work with other organizations or leverage what other organizations are doing, was my question to her. I didn't necessarily say collaborate, but I think, you know, if there are opportunities and we can specify an area, because right now we have a number of suggestions, but we have to get a focus, right? Because we can't go after all 26, 8, or even, you know, probably 5, right? Or maybe we can, but what I asked her is, you know, how can we leverage what other folks are doing so that there are multiple things going on? And I said, there are multiple organizations doing similar work. And one of the conversations we had with the mayor and the department heads was, if their organization's already receiving dollars for certain areas, then we don't want to go after those same dollars. We want to help leverage that. We want to, add to that. And so that was one of the, things we did talk about. But in terms of actually collaborating with somebody else, I think that's a great idea. I think that's something that, we need to look into, but we need to figure out what the focus is, right? And we need to figure out what we want to jump on. And that's kind of the work that I've been asking Eric and Michael and Doug, and you guys have as well, in terms of pushing that, right? In terms of getting that focus in so that we can finish this report, go after this implementation grant, get the city with us in line in terms of what we can do together with the city. Because at the end of the day, it's the city of Springfield that has to apply for the funds. I see
Okay.
Beatrice's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to share to provide a little context. Hopefully this helps as well. But there are many organizations that are doing some of this, 6 items that are on the list. So for example, Wayfinders is providing residents with digital literacy skills training. We actually just got not a lot, but a few hotspots that will be available to community residents. We just launched that this week, actually. We're doing some digital navigation, which is providing support to residents who need information and access on, how to find Xfinity Internet Essentials, or do I qualify for Lifeline, and things of that nature. And there's other organizations as well, like Revitalize is doing this, New North as well. So, there are CBOs that are actively working here. Admittedly, there's not enough funding. We're all feeling a little insecure about like how long can we do this, because we can't without funding. But I like the idea of figuring out how do we leverage existing programs so that the reach is wider. And really, that 100K, Roberta, I agree with you. It is not a lot of funding. So how do you take that, leverage it, so that it can go a little bit further, working with people already in these spaces and places? And matter of fact, Jean's here, so Jean can even tell you the libraries are doing a lot too. So there's absolutely a lot happening.
Yep.
And I just wanted to throw that in there.
I appreciate that. Now, before I let anybody else, I just want to acknowledge 2 of my colleagues who have joined us, Councilors Tim Allen and Councilors Victor Davila. Really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, Beatrice. And that was one of the conversations with them, is like, there's so much going on, but it doesn't seem like there's anybody connecting a lot of that work. And so I think that's where some of that confusion is. So I have more stuff to talk about on that, but I don't want to keep from, because I know Eric has to leave. So I want to make sure that any questions that we have, we get to Eric, and I can fill you in on the back end on some of the other stuff that I was working on. Mr. Howard.
You asked, Mr. Chair, about other sources. MBI is just like a drop in the bucket for the money that's out there, because for those who may not be aware of it, back in 2008, President Obama started this initiative. In 2009, 65 billion with a B, $65 billion was allocated nationwide for broadband digital equity. Digital equity meaning making sure people have computers, making sure they know how to use computers and so forth. And 2021, President Biden kicked in another $65 billion. Then he kicked in another $45 billion. And we're talking about $100,000. Now, here it is that digital equity, NTIA is the main source for these funds. The last time I looked, I think they've allocated something like $43 billion, leaving at least $22 billion on the table. Mr. Chair, you just asked about other places to tap into this money.
Yes.
But I've been saying, and I was actually insulted in another meeting, we need to go after the money because 50% of downtown Springfield do not have internet access. I'm in the house, I'm walking around with my phone, the lines keep dropping. People are calling me, I'm getting messages because there's no connectivity. There are billions of dollars out there, and the people who are supposed to know this stuff apparently don't know it because they're fixated on MBI. I've been talking about NTIA ever since I got involved with this committee. And yet it's like people still don't know about NTIA when that is where the money is.
But can you apply for funds if you don't have a plan?
I thought that was what this whole thing was supposed to be about, getting a plan together.
And that's,
But people are talking about giving it to
but this is what Eric and his team are working on, is a plan and a focus.
$71 million for early education, and all this is part of the digital equity plan. $8 million allocated to Massachusetts Technology Collaborative to support, for cybersecurity. You got all this money out there and people don't know about it. And I keep sending out emails, I keep trying to talk to people about it, but it's like nobody wants to hear what I'm saying. I've attended neighborhood council meetings. I try to bring it to their attention. They're like, they have people handling that. Don't talk to us. This is not the time and place to talk to us. So, okay, if you're supposed to be representing the voice of the community, and I'm trying to tell you there's millions of dollars out there so that the children in schools could have computers, not only in class, but to take home so they could do their homework and have some supplies in case the device breaks, it could be replaced immediately instead of waiting 3 months to have it replaced. You have all this funding that's out there to teach people how to operate a computer. When I was sick, sometimes the people don't even know how to turn on the computer.
All right, in the interest of time, because this is the same thing that happened at the Brightwood meeting.
Because we're not going after the money.
Because you have to come up with a plan first, and that's what we're doing. You keep talking about funding that we can't go after without a plan. Anybody who is in any type of grant writing or any nonprofit organization knows you need to put a plan together to go after that money.
2 years, Mr. Chair. 2 years.
Well, I've been here 11 months, so.
11 months and still no plan.
All right, I'm gonna move on because it's the same thing that happened last time. So I gave you your time. All right, anybody else questions for Eric? Roberta?
Yeah, this is a question for Eric. There is a possibility, if the incoming president does what he says he's going to do, for federal funds to be frozen on January 20th, the first day of the new administration. Do you have a plan B if the federal funds are frozen?
Do I have a plan B? I don't think anybody has a plan B if federal funds are frozen. But what I do know is that the MBI has the money that they've said is going to be set aside. That money is already set aside and locked up. That money can't be touched. I don't know beyond that. And I know that there's a lot of questions about all different funds, whether it's EPA, Department of Education, money that Wayfinders gets, money that we get, money the city gets. There are probably 1,000 variables and no one answer to all of that as Trump comes into power. But that is where we're all going to have to watch. And we're as concerned about that in this realm and many other realms as you are. And the amount of damage it could do, so.
I think every organization that depends on any type of funding from the federal government has that same question. And
yeah, that's
that
in part.
includes the state of Massachusetts with a lot of funding that the state itself gets and that the city of Springfield gets then from both the federal and state.
Right, I understand that. I'm asking that because that in part is why I'm suggesting collaborative efforts with other organizations to get them, funded as quickly as possible.
I really like your idea of more collaboration. We did a bit of collaboration with Wayfinders on this effort, and we would certainly welcome other collaborations as they present themselves.
Eric, with that suggestion, I mean, can you put in something into the report? I mean, I know that it'll take a little bit
Absolutely.
of time, but I think, you know, to that point, we have to be cognizant of a future where some of this stuff, as Ms. Roberta said, will be frozen.
In this current draft of the report, which we will send out after this meeting, there is more detail on the local organizations and what's going on. So we've done some of that, but not all of that.
All right. Any other questions from folks on the report? I mean, please continue to send your suggestions to Eric, Michael, and Doug as we kind of push this along and try to get this report done. Michael, anything else from you?
Well, I get,
All right.
well, I'll say one quick thing. Just, I think B's point is totally right on, you know, so the way MBI pushed out money, there was the municipal world and there was the CBO nonprofit world. And so
Right.
in the CBO world, since 2023, when the Alliance for Digital Equity got, you know, its money, it's been partnering both with Wayfinders, Springfield Partners, New North Citizen Council, more recently Springfield Community with the library. So there's a lot going on. I think it's a matter of figuring out.
It's
And that
coordinated.
stuff is, and that is, well, it is coordinated on the CBO side. I think the challenge is, where does the city step into that? And what role is the city? Like, the city doesn't have to direct it, but the city should be a partner and understanding what's there, what's missing.
And I think that's some of the suggestions I think that we need from you guys is, you guys understand this landscape, you understand what's happening on the
Yeah.
ground level. I understand folks want big level stuff, and that's why when I mentioned to Eric, like, I want big level, I want like midterm stuff, and I want like
Yep.
what, like the low hanging fruit that we
Right.
could be accomplishing while we're finishing all this.
Yeah, and we can certainly add more emphasis to that section of the report in terms of local collaborations and local efforts.
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yes.
Sure.
One thing I know, I know we're all feeling a little discouraged because we know 100K just won't go very far when we're in a city with such tremendous need. But I think of our climate work that the city is doing. So Wayfinders is a part of that as well. But PVPC years ago did a climate action resilience plan. So there's a big planning process. What does the city need around climate? Now we're at a point where we just got a $20 million EPA grant, and that's a collaborative grant with the city, kind of CBOs like Wayfinders and others worked with the city to get the grant. So I guess this requires us to do some visioning too. You
Yeah.
know, we might start with 100K, but I won't lie, I'm that type. I'm visioning. I'm already saying, okay, so how do we leverage 100K? Build these collaborations and this partnership with the city, get the city on board. How does the city now apply for more funding and, really create similar to what we've done around our climate work here in Springfield? It can happen. But I get it. It's such a frustrating process. And I just want to say we're kind of at an entry point for the city of Springfield around digital equity. So I hope that makes some of us feel better about where we're going with this, but I just wanted to share.
I like your idea of doing that, and if we can work with the city and the citizens groups to pull something together between now and July 1, I think that would be of great value. So that will also be in there.
That also kind of aligns with, so one of the things I also wanted to mention to you guys is in talking with Andy Doty and the folks from IT here, one of the things I did ask to do is, we don't have a page that people can go on to get more information. So one of the things I asked him is, can we set up a landing page, not just for the digital equity working group, but just in terms of digital equity in general? And one of the things I told him that I would like to put out there is, information about MBI, other funding resources.
Yep.
But also information around what other organizations in the area are already doing, so that we can be a one-stop shop. So if anybody needs to learn stuff, they can go to this page and click on these links and get as much information as we can to kind of, to that point, right, have like a center where folks know what's going on within this space. So that's one of the things that I've been working with Councilor Fenton to help create and put it on the city council page. IT, but I'm gonna need the help of this group to kind of help put that together and what would be the best way to frame it, to structure it so that it's readable and it's accessible and helpful for the residents and other organizations. So
I love it.
so that was one of the things I wanted to make sure I mentioned to you guys. Secondly, I did mention already, we met with MBI. We went over the process. She wants to continue to stay helpful. And we, as mentioned before, you know, I asked her about other grants that are coming out. So one of the things I saw was that Verizon got a $37 million grant that was through the Gap Network Grant Program. And the communities that are covered in there, Springfield is one of the community that's covered, but there's several other communities that are in there. So I asked them for more information. So she got me the contact information for the person who is dealing with that grant. I don't know if anybody else knows what that grant is doing, but I asked them for that so that we can get more information from Verizon. Mike, I saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, so the GAP program was for ISPs to apply if there were residents that didn't have connectivity, and there were gaps in people's connectivity, that the ISPs got money through MBI to build it out. And the thing that's worth noting, Jose, is that when I talked to MBI months ago, I basically said, you know, if an ISP has this money, what's their responsibility to the community? And what Josh Eichen told me at that point in time is that if they're coming into community to make sure that there's gap funding, they're responsible for everything within the bounds of the municipality. So to Stephen's point, if there's people who are not connected, who are not currently identified, who don't have connectivity, it would be on Verizon to actually, you know, figure out how to connect them. So I don't think Verizon necessarily wants to take on that responsibility, but I think that's the proactive part, because they got the gap funding and therefore they're responsible for picking that up. So a little more research on how to move forward with that would probably be helpful.
Yeah, and in addition to that piece, you know, I saw that there were other funding that was going out in Springfield directly, not the city of Springfield, but different. This one was for the upgrade of public housing internet, and there were three different entities that got the funding, and Springfield was in two of them in terms of one of them was Bay Meadow Apartments, which was preservation of affordable housing. They're part of that grant, and then the second one was the car property management. So these are housing developments or whatnot, but these are all private. And so there are funding that is happening that are going to different entities that are coming into the city of Springfield based off of the grants that are here. So, but
And we have had conversations with Springfield Housing as well as part of this.
Yep, and I had a separate conversation as well with the executive director, who also is on the statewide board or whatever you want to call it. So I've had conversations with her as well in terms of making sure that, you know, to that point of collaboration that we know. So I think that website will be helpful, but I want to make sure that we continue to do that. Mr. Howard, I saw your hand.
Yes, I'd like to ask Eric, what kind of media campaign did you have since you got involved with this? I'm not just talking about social media, I'm talking about traditional media.
Well, we reached out in as many ways as we could to different people and we got to the meetings. We tried to target and have people directly contacted. We found it, and I will say this is true for everybody around the state, that it was really hard for anybody to attract a lot of people to their meetings on this topic, no matter what town you're in. So I don't claim to have a magic answer to how to get people out to answer this question. I just know it's been a challenge for us and it's been a challenge for others, and we are trying. We did try. So I appreciate the question, and we tried to come up with ways that would give us an advantage, and we got what we got. So
I'm
Let me
sorry,
rephrase my question.
I'm not sure that was the full question. For example, have there been any interviews conducted by any of the local television stations?
there was
or-
one set that was done a couple months ago,
'Cause
and then there was
I
one
think
set that was done very early on. in the process as
Right.
well.
I don't think we're just talking about in order to have people showing up at those various locations. I think we're also talking about publicizing
Yep.
what's out there so that organizations similar to what Wayfinders was able to find out and pursue, that other organizations would also be made aware
Yep.
through our efforts.
Yep.
Right. So it's not just reaching out because because we're asking people to come to us at some function. It's reaching out to where people are to inform them, through the broadcast media, for example, of what's going on. So it piggybacks off of the website that the counselor just mentioned. It's another way of publicizing to the broader community about what possibilities there are
Yep.
that they may be pursuing.
No,
I'm sorry.
I just want to rephrase my question.
Okay.
It basically is an extension of what Roberta just said. For the past couple of years, I've been out there handing out flyers, not for this, because no one really spoke to me about it. I've been on the committee and stuff. I've been trying to get folks to do stuff, and it seems like it's falling on deaf ears. But for the past couple of years, I've been out there promoting the free education, college education. That received a tremendous response. Robert, what is his name? Demusis, I think his name is. At Housing.
Yeah.
I went and spoke with him, and he gave me like at least 1,000 flyers to give out, and every one of those flyers were handed out. Last time I went to the office, he asked me, Stephen, please don't give out any more flyers. We ran out of money. Like the phones were going crazy. He says, look at the sign-in sheet. Look how many pages. He says it's a good thing because in the first conversation he and I had, they were talking about sending money back to the state because of underutilization. I've spoken when at another, I think it was a 10-year plan. I spoke to Ms. B about, hey, look, hire me, I'll get the word out, right? Now, these are two places where I went out and I just did it voluntarily, and the response was fantastic. Here it is that people still don't even know that this thing exists.
Well, let me
And
stop,
one of the
let
reasons
me
why
stop you
people
there,
want to
Mr.
ask
Howard,
me-
because I did ask you to help us out when we were talking about outreach, and that you said you were gonna come up with a plan, an outreach plan for me, so I don't wanna, we don't wanna get into what hasn't been done, because I personally have also gone on their flyers, but I asked you
No,
to do a plan.
I've given out flyers, but the thing is,
I get it, we wanna make sure that they're pushing, I get it.
but the thing is, I'm not being paid for this. There are people who are being paid, and they need to know when you want to get the information out to the community.
I agree with you,
You have to have a publicity campaign,
I agree with you.
and apparently there was none.
All right, Miss Beatrice?
Yeah, I just want to say we probably could have done better in the area of engagement, but I do want to share there is a difference, but it is way more challenging to get people to come to a meeting about something that they don't really understand that quite that well. And what we've learned is we've engaged others. Many of you know that we have a resident-led coalition called the Connect Hamden County Coalition, where we've had, 30, 40 people at our meeting. Eric has come, Michael has come.
Yep.
They
Yep.
presented theirs. I don't know if you, Eric, if you included that in your report at all, but the point is that it's really different and hard and challenging to get people to come because they often don't know what they don't know. So
Right.
most of the people that we were able to pull in are people who've come to a digital class. And it's in that class where they're like, wow, I didn't know this world was out there. And
Right.
so once, the light went off, now it's like, okay, how do I help others? So a lot of people just didn't know that there was this inequity or this lack of access. And so I think that's part of the challenge too, is, we're talking about digital equity. on a flyer, and some people are thinking, well, I got my phone. Like we would survey people and they'd say, oh, I have internet. And I'd
Yeah.
say, in your home? No, on my phone. I'm fine. Not recognizing the distinction between accessing your home and a device and on your phone. And so education and awareness, that's why I'm always saying, how are we going to educate the public? How are we going to get the word out? Because that's part of the challenge I think we're facing.
Yeah, I agree
Really,
with you on that, and I would say is some of the things, I've actually done a couple of interviews with the media as well on it, but those interviews don't go far enough in terms of explaining that what digital equity means. Some people still don't even know what that means, to your point. Yep,
Uh,
I agree with,
Counselor,
yes, sir.
I do have to run at 5 o'clock. I want to say a couple of things before I go. One is, I want to give a big thank you to B for what she just said, because I know that we came to her meetings and we did our best there. The other thing I want to remind everybody is that our role as a planning agency is to help come up with a plan and help get the plan implemented as best we can. And so we're trying to do that to the best of our abilities here. This is a tricky subject matter, as it has been said, that there's great promise, and yet there's a real challenge of what to do going into the future. We're going to do our best with the time that remains and take under consideration all the suggestions that have been made here. And like I said, we're still continuing to look at everything we can look at. So I do have a 5 o'clock I have to run to. I apologize to anybody. I
Yeah.
have to present to the executive board of the PVPC on a couple of things. But I do appreciate all this. And if Michael and Doug, if you can hang here for a little while for us, just to keep answering any questions that might come up, I would appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep folks too much longer than this. I did have one other update that I wanted to mention to you. During this, I also had Comcast reach out to me and had a conversation with them, and they're aware of obviously the work that we're doing. But they wanted to update me on some of the things that they are doing, which I learned from that. And one of the things they talked about was a senior discount for cable services.
Yep.
That they mentioned. And I asked them, how many people know about this, or how many folks actually are subscribed to this plan. They, at that point, they didn't have the numbers, and I don't know if it's like a proprietary thing or not, but I asked them, because this would help inform us in the work that we're doing around digital equity. When we're talking about grant funding and what we're going after, it'd be good to know how many folks are actually taking advantage of that, or how many people need those services.
Yep.
They mentioned their Internet Essentials program. And so I wanted to flag that here just because it was a conversation that I thought was connected to the work that we're doing. So I'm still waiting back from them to get more information on that, and I'm hoping that can help inform us in some of the work we're doing here.
What information do you need?
I'm gonna say to everybody that I'm leaving, have a
Yeah,
good
thanks,
holiday. Take some time
Take
off
care.
and
Enjoy your
relax if
holidays,
you
man.
can. Take care.
So, they were mentioning some of the stuff that around Internet Essentials, and I said, well, we're doing all this, planning stuff on it. I said, like, it'd be nice to know, one, how many people are actually using it or know about it. Two, I did mention that the ACP program, went away earlier this year, so I'm curious to know if they had any bump or not. And then I asked, what ways, same thing, same question you're asking, Mr. Howard, is what ways are you marketing this out to people? Like, I'm not even sure if folks know about this program, right? And if that's a program that's offered, then that's something that can help us in terms of when we're talking about all the different, initiatives, I guess, for lack of better, that are out there.
Within my building, you can probably tell who has Internet Essentials because the SSID will start with the word home.
Okay.
And what I advocated this very strongly. We got sick of hearing me talk about it. But what most of us did was drop from 29 to 9.95. That was how we were able to do it. We realized that most of us weren't streaming movies and we weren't doing all that sort of stuff. So that as far as internet and stuff was concerned, we could deal with the $9.95 a month. So that's what most of us did when the ABC went away.
Okay.
And in my building is people who have to be homeless when you apply to renter. So most of us don't have much money at all. At least we don't have it. But I have had some difficulties with Comcast trying to get them to recognize, in some cases, our people have been paying for months and not had any access.
Huh, that's
And that's
something.
because somebody told somebody to get a hold of, and the message never got there. You know, and so I would like to see a little more effort in trying to make the things happen that might not be the highest income producer for the company. You know, I mean, it's much easier for them to charge somebody than it is to do internet essentials. But I know of a man who doesn't want to go through a lot of hassle and fight with people, but he's been paying for over a year. And all I'm saying, now that he's in a program now where he may get his internet for a year free, but I want Comcast to give him a credit of a year and a half for all these times he paid his $9.95, but never got somebody to connect the wires. See, what happens is, you have to have the wire connected up to his unit, and that's a thing down cellar.
Is that a thing? Is that a Comcast thing or is that the building?
That,
The
it
building.
has to be a Comcast thing at the building. They come.
The building, because what happens is Comcast gets it to the building. What happens in the building is the building. So now they have to run the cable in, the Ethernet cables.
Yeah. I
See,
think
all
that-
ours, all the internet, all the cable is run. But downstairs in the cellar, Comcast has to come and connect the wire, because that's their business.
Alright. So
We can't connect it.
I'm happy to send that issue and that person to the person I met with at Comcast, but I think it might be a good idea at some point to have them present to this meeting if possible, to this group if possible, and you guys can actually share that across, so.
And we have benefit here in Springfield, but I think of the communities that are just a little bit beyond us, sort of connected in our area. And for them, for more rural people, Verizon is the only game in town. You can't even do the satellite with the trees around and such. You just can't. So for them, DSL is the best they can get. And so I would like to see those communities, because I came from a rural community, I would like to see those communities at least get the DSL, if nothing else, instead of being left out entirely, because rural communities often think that's what happened. It goes to the cities and we get left with nothing.
But they've been getting money.
Charlie, can I interrupt real quick? The individual you spoke on, do they live in your residence?
Charlie,
Live in your residence.
Yes.
Okay, so reach out to me. You
Yeah.
know how to reach me. You even have my personal number. So reach out to me so I can help. Because that's a Wayfinder's property. And
Okay.
so feel comfortable reaching out to me,
What I'm trying
okay?
to say is, I think we're missing the point I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
What I'm
No,
saying
I
is
get your point, but I want to help the
sometimes
individual
people
as well.
Don't want to rock the boat because they're afraid, you
Yeah.
know, afraid of what happened.
Yeah.
But
Hey.
when people actually are owed something, they need to get it. You know, and the person may say, well, it's only $11 a month. No,
That's
but if you pay the $11 a month, you need to get the service for the $11. And now he's going an end round to get it at a different way, but I still think he needs the credit.
Yeah.
You know, and
Heard-
people don't want to get in a fight with big corporations because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. Especially that's true of people who've been homeless because we've been beat up a whole lot.
So I've noted that here.
Jose,
Thank you for sharing that. Michael.
yeah, I just want to jump in because I think Charlie raises a good point, but if we sort of pull it back a bit,
Yeah.
part of the discussion is how can the city, step into this space given there's activities going on? And I think this is a really good example. So, B and Keish will do a great job at Wayfinders, but they're a nonprofit. And, although they have existing relationships with Brad at Comcast, there's only so much they can do. The city of Springfield, if it has an ombudsman and residents can call or advocates can call the ombudsman at the city has got much more leverage to call Comcast and say, we've got a resident with this problem. Comcast has a separate relationship with the city about cable. So they've got an invested relationship to keep the city happy. And I think this is a really good example where if there is a person on staff who's looking at this stuff, that ombudsman digital equity advocate, there's no replacement for what the city can do in terms of heft, in terms of advocacy.
Thank you. I know that's one of the suggestions on that list in terms of that kind of digital equity kind of navigator role type position. So, but no, I appreciate that piece. Roberta's had her hand up and I know people have jumped in, so I want to make sure I get back to Miss Roberta.
Yeah, I want us to take what Beatrice said very, very seriously. Charlie, another member of the working group, and I, over a year and a half ago, it was somewhere around June of 23, made a proposal to the working group that we have outreach taking place at that time we were getting into the summer, at various of the summer activities that draw hundreds, in some cases, thousands of people.
Puerto Rican Day Parade.
The working group, for whatever reason, was not in a position to actually carry out that activity, which would have involved like spending a Sunday afternoon at Blunt Park. And it was then proposed after the summer passed that we needed a consultant. So a contract was entered into with PVPC. And instead of our going out, our meaning whomever from our side, whether it was PVPC or working group members, instead of our going to where people were, the decision was made that people should come to us. And the incentive was a slice of pizza and a bottle of water. We passed through another summer this year, and I'm not aware that we went to where people are. I'm aware of a number of occasions, and this is separate from what Beatrice mentioned with PVPC going to their activity. I'm aware of a number of occasions that were held at various places around the city where we once again said people should come to us. Charlie, I'm going to mention you because I've seen you for many years having to ride a bicycle to go for great distances in order to go to places. The people who are underserved in Springfield do not necessarily have 2023 models of cars to go to the places that we say they should come to find us. We need to take what Beatrice said very seriously. She mentioned 40 people. I don't know that we've had anything where there were 40 people who were not counting the people who are connected to the working group or PVPC or some politician who wants to show up for the photo op. We need for, and I'm not talking about outreach in order to have 3 more things listed in a plan that's taking a year and a half to write. I'm talking about getting information out to the public, right? We need to have things like what Beatrice was talking about, where whether it's the working group, a PVPC person, a city hall person, whoever it is, goes to where people are. Let us take our 2023 model cars and go to where people are and stop telling poor people who can't even afford $9 if they also have to pay their Eversource bill to come to us.
And with my media experience, a lot of people here don't know that I have 25 plus years of radio under my belt. I have 2 to 3 years of television production under my belt. I have about 5 years worth of advertising, working for an advertising agency under my belt. When I tell people, hey, look, hire me, I'll get the word out there. It's like, all right, never hear from them, reach out to them, they never get back to me or anything like that.
Who are you talking about specifically when you said the people?
Well, you know, there's one person here especially that I spoke to at a couple of meetings, like, you know, that talk to me, you know, like I'll you know, work with me, hire me. Never heard from them. And even when I go to other places, other community organizations, I say, listen, let's do this. At Stick, when I went and I started giving out flyers at the different community organizations, people were like, oh yeah, I got that over here. Yeah, I got that flyer over here. Yeah, I got that flyer over here. And they were coming to the class. I know how to get the word out, right? But you know, people think I just like to blow hot air. What can I say?
So I agree with everything that's been said by everybody about outreach. I know Eric's even mentioned that outreach can be better. And so that's what we're talking about. We continue to talk about that. We need to create a plan about that. And I will ask you again, Mr. Howard, as I asked you months ago, help us to come up with a plan. You mentioned your expertise to me. Help us come up with a plan to do that outreach. And I would say that to anybody else on any other stuff that we need to get out there. This is what the working group is for. Let's come up with the plan. So I'm gonna ask,
Let me intervene here, please, because
yes,
many of these things we have suggested from the working group side, we have been suggesting since
Last
the
year.
contract was entered into. We came up at least 2 times that I'm aware of with long lists of things for outreach for PVPC to undertake. And they keep coming back with people should come to us. We're offering them a slice of pizza and a bottle of water. So it's not just whether or not on our side, on the working group side, we make suggestions. It's also whether or not those people who are supposedly in a position to do the work understand what it means to reach out to underrepresented people. If they don't understand what it means, they will continue to do what they're doing for the last year, which is to have meetings where they pat themselves on the back because they got, in one case, it was one person who happened to be in the library at that moment.
which one was that one?
I'm being very blunt, and I see Michael is still here. If Eric was on the phone, I would still mention it. There were long lists of ways to reach out to religious organizations, to reach out to senior citizen centers and so forth, to go to those places. But PVPC, for whatever reason, has refused to do any of those things in a consistent way, if at all.
Thank you, Roberta. If you could send me whatever was sent in the past, even if you could find over a year and a half ago. I
It's
guess,
in the minutes and it's in the YouTube recordings of the meetings.
so, Mike, Doug, if we can follow up on that, please, because I mean,
You know, when
I
you
think
reach
they've said
out,
it before, and Beatrice has said it. I mean, we're kind of at this point now. So any future work, I mean, we really need to put better thought into that, in terms of what has been said here. In terms
I
of,
understand the consulting firm is mandated by MBI. We cannot choose among firms. But when we're working with a firm that is full of privilege in their approach to how they work, and they refuse to take advice from people who work with underrepresented communities, who live in underrepresented communities. I have spoken to prisoner groups inside of Ossining State Prison that provide more food than a slice of pizza and a bottle of water. I've told that to PVPC that I think it's outrageous that's an incentive for people to leave their children home alone to come out to a meeting, to meet with PVPC in the library or wherever. When we're talking about people who don't have nannies, you know, I'm sounding really angry, and I am angry, and I think I deserve to be. And if somebody tells me I'm not supposed to be an angry Black woman, I'll start cursing because it's been over a year.
we don't want that.
It's been over a year. And the first draft they produced looked like what they produced for the Bay State Health people 2 years before. And when I asked a couple of weeks ago, I asked about data that is up to date, I was still told, oh, we're looking into that. No, it's not acceptable.
Referring to them, that we could go and be there with a table.
Second. All right, thank you, Miss Roberta. I got Beatrice, and I kind of want to have one more after that so we can close on.
And I'm actually speaking on behalf of Keishla, because this is her idea. And she's just now, she's got some activity going on in the background. But one of the ideas that she's been kind of pushing, but there's no funding for it, is a digital equity resource fair. So we go to these health fairs and we have these career fairs and we do it at city schools and maybe on a Saturday at the Boys and Girls Club or different locations like that where the people are with a bunch of information and access and incentives. And she was saying, have we ever done anything like that around digital equity? I said, not to my knowledge. She said, there's enough resources and Roberta, everything you said was spot on. Like, thank you for saying it. Because we do have to go to where people are, and we do have to educate and raise awareness. And so I just wanted to share that's an idea that Keishla Michael, she was going to lift it up to the Alliance. So, but why not share it here with the city as
No,
well?
I love that idea, and it's funny you mentioned that because I was talking with Sequoia when we had the meeting with Comcast on, and I think it was somebody else as well. I don't know if it was Roberta, about having some of the, whatever you want to call them, the providers come to something like that. So invite a Verizon, invite a Comcast, invite folks. So I love that idea, Keishla, and I think we should think about that for next year. So I'm gonna add that.
Can I just say one final thing? My little collective, which started in April, it's a build and repair computer organization. It's only the three of us. We have been to there was one time where every weekend we were at a different community event, giving out computers for free. We gave out between 50 to 60 computers, and this is coming out of pocket. We collect all the discarded computers, we repair them, and we give them out to community organizations. They give it out to their members. All this summer, we were at practically every event, promoting ourselves. Where was that kind of promotion? When you have $1 million allocation, and you don't find the same thing going on? We didn't have any money coming from the government or from corporations, and we did this.
Good, so I hope you guys can help us to do the same thing on this side. With that, I'm gonna end the meeting at 5:20. Thank you guys so much with the robust discussion. And Doug and Mike, if you could have Eric, please make sure that he resends out that stuff. And I've taken some notes, but if anybody else got some notes, I'd love to put our notes together so we can move forward for the next one. So thank you guys.